Gotcha.
That's good. Hello, welcome back to the Scoreboard Scene. I'm your host, Xander Steele, and today we'll be joined by Garret from Football Analysis. Welcome, Garret. How are you?
I'm doing good. Appreciate you having me on, and I'm looking forward to it.
Perfect. Let's talk some ball. This should be interesting. We got a 32 round mock draft lined up, so let's go.
Absolutely.
So, with the first overall pick, I think it's quite clear at this point, but I do have the Titans taking Cam Ward with the first pick. I think the disaster with Will Levis last year and Brian Callahan clearly not on the same page. It was moments of frustration. I think Cam Ward is the pick here.
Yeah, I would be very surprised if it's not at this point. I think everybody would be surprised. I mean, you're not going to roll into the season with what they have at quarterback currently, and especially when you have the number one pick, you don't have to wait and see how the board plays. I mean, they've all but announced that Cam Ward will be the number one pick, so I'm looking forward to seeing how that era plays out in Nashville.
Yeah, it should be interesting. It should be, I think his athleticism combined with his agility and his speed as well. I think he'll be a really fine player in the league. And maybe a top 10 quarterback in a couple of years' time. And I think with the investments with Kevin Zeitler and Dan Moore in the offensive line, I think it's clear that they are gearing up to take a quarterback at one.
Absolutely. What we have at two here?
So with my second pick, I have the Browns going with Travis Hunter out of Colorado. I think Stefanski is just going to look for a good weapon for whatever quarterback comes in. And I am seeing a lot of stuff recently about potentially Kirk Cousins joining the Browns. And that's heating up. And I think Hunter's ability to play both sides, I think Stefanski would really value that in the league. So
Yeah, I mean, I personally think Abdul Carter will be the pick at this point, but I'm not going to push back on either of the top two players in the draft. They are my 1-2. I personally have Abdul Carter a little above Travis Hunter, but like I said, both are very good prospects. I'm not going to use the generational word. I don't think either are
yeah,
generational prospects. I don't think either are generational, but they're both very good prospects. And I mean, look, Travis Hunter, Jerry Judy, the idea of Kirk Cousins in that offense, along with David Njoku, is, I mean, it's a step in the right direction compared to what they had. So
agreed.
I can get behind this. I can get behind this pick.
Agreed. So at three, I have quite a spicy and interesting take here, but I have the Giants going with Armin Membu with the third overall pick. And my reasoning behind this is because Evan Neal is a bust, and I think that's quite clear. Like 3 years into his career, he hasn't really proven anything, and I think Brian Dable is going to want an impact player at three. And personally, like you look at the playmakers they have Malik Neighbors, and they have Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston on the roster. So if they did bring in Shedeur Sanders, he'd be a QB3. And I don't think Brian Dable, with the desperation in his position just now, I don't think he would go with a quarterback at three.
Yeah, that's definitely spicy. It's the first I've seen this, and I credit you for going out on a limb for this one because this is not one this is one I haven't seen yet. I like the idea though, and I definitely agree with what you're saying with Evan Neal. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. I
Yeah,
personally think like I said, I think Abdul Carter would be the selection here to pair him opposite of Brian Burns, and then to be able to have Brian Burns, Abdul Carter, and Dexter Lawrence get after the quarterback. But I mean, I'm a big Armand Membu guy. I started liking him, all the way back in December, and I've been a big Armand Membu guy since. To me, he has the talent to be a Pro Bowl level offensive lineman for a long time. So like I said, I personally go Abdul Carter, but no matter what, you are upgrading what the Giants currently have.
exactly. Yeah, and I think the duo of Membu and Andrew Thomas on the offensive line would be a good tackle duo for any quarterback coming in, whether it's Russell Wilson for a year or maybe Arch Manning in next year's draft, depending on how the board falls next year.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Armand Membu, great football player, great prospect. PFF has him 11th overall. I'll probably have him a little higher, to be honest. I'm really really high on Membu.
Yeah, I think he's a fine player. And at four, this is the dream selection for the Patriots. They will be taking Abdul Carter with the fourth pick. Mike Vrabel is going to get his guy at four, an elite edge rusher, I think, with all the physical traits to just be a top five edge rusher in the league in a couple of years' time. And I think Harold Landry isn't the long term solution. So
Yeah, not a lot to say. I mean, Abdul Carter, like I said, top 2 player in the class, my personal top player in this class. The biggest thing, upgrading at a premium position. Unfortunately, Travis Hunter not there for them to potentially pair with Drake May. And if the choice became Abdul Carter or Teteroa McMillan, as much as I like T Mac and as much as I think he's been an overthought prospect at times due to what I would personally consider prospect fatigue, at no point in the draft process would I have taken T Mac over Abdul Carter. So, not, I mean, like you said, elite player, great pairing for a team that desperately needs an edge. And you're in a division where you have to stop Josh Allen. And if you're ever going to get out of the division, then a conference loaded with quarterbacks. So,
Yeah.
I'm not going to push back in an elite pass rushing prospect, especially for an AFC team.
Agreed. I 100% agree with you. And speaking of Tetro McMillan, I have him going to the Jaguars at 5. I think Liam Cohen is going to want to replicate his system that he had in Tampa. And I think a duo of Brian Thomas Jr. and Tetro McMillan out of Arizona will be an elite receiver duo partnership for the next 5 to 10 years.
Brian Thomas and T Mac along with Trevor it'd be fun. It would be a really good quarterback and wide receiver duo. It would be, I would say, definitely one of the better ones in the league. And I personally think Trevor has I still think he has it. It's just a matter of being able to put it together. I think there were times last year before he got hurt where it was frustrating and the writing was on the wall after the Jags started out slow, considering they were 8-3 in 2023 and then finished the year on what I think was a 1-6 end of the year. And then they started out
Yeah.
slow started out slow in 2024. And then the writing was on the wall in like the week 8, week 9 area that Doug Peterson's going to be fired. So I'm eager to see for Duval how they bounce back in 2025. I think Mason Graham
Yeah,
would
it'll be
be.
interesting.
I do think Mason Graham would be an alternative selection here. But T Mac, Brian Thomas, Trevor, great quarterback and receiving duo.
Yeah, and I think with the loss of Christian Kirk as well and Gabe Davis' lack of high quality play, I really do think T Mac could be a really good selection here for the Jags at 5. So, and at 6, it's a nice easy pick. I have the Raiders going with Ashton Genty. I think this is going to be a really quick analysis, but same process as last year. Just take the best player available. It worked with Brock Bowers at tight end last year. Pete Carroll has said multiple times he wants to run the ball hard. So I think Ashton Genty will be the pick here at 6.
I'm with you. Very simple. They have Gino. They just actually signed him to a contract extension today,
Yeah,
prior to recording. And I mean, what offense is going to say, you know what, we're good. We don't need Brock Bowers. We don't need Ashton Genty. I understand
yeah,
that. I mean, they have Christian Wilkins. He got hurt last year, but Ashton Genty is a really good player. I'm never going to push back. I mean, maybe like number 1 or 2 overall, but that's not the conversation we're having. But I mean, when you can have Ashton Genty and Gino and everybody else and Brock Bowers and I like what Vegas would be building in that scenario. So Ashton Genty to me is a top 3-4 player in this class. You get him at 6, you get better value, you get a significant upgrade at the running back position. So good for the Raiders landing spot there.
yeah, exactly, easily. And at 7, Aaron Glenn is going to be very happy with how the board has fallen so far, and he is going to go with Mason Graham out of Michigan. He's just going to keep on building his defensive trenches, pairing him with Quinton Williams in the interior. And I think it's going to be a really good duo for years to come.
I do too. And last year, what was unfortunate for the Jets was they had Javon Kinlaw, who I'm not the highest on, had an opportunity to really set the next several years of his career up because he's not that old and he could have played there for the next 4 or 5 years. And he didn't have a great year. And Washington gave him a lot more money than I thought they were, or anybody was going to. So credit
Yeah.
to him for getting the bag and good for him. But Mason Graham, you get a good player on a cheap contract because of the rookie value contract, and it's an upgrade to what you previously had. So that's pretty close to a dream scenario there for the Jets for the board to play out like that.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect fit, and Aaron Glenn is going to be happy he gets his guy in the interior, and that's what he's going to focus on is trench play. And we saw that in Detroit as well, with how both sides of the trenches worked in that line system as well. So yeah, Mason Graham will be the pick to the Jets at 7. And at 8, I have the Panthers going with edge rusher Mike Green out of Marshall. Now, despite allegations of sexual harassment, I do think Mike Green is a really fine edge rusher. And I think overall his play style would really fit in that Panthers system that did struggle to generate pressure last year on the defensive line.
Yeah, I made this pairing a lot. I like this pick. Mike Green is a really good player. I was actually just re-going through his tape a couple of weeks or a couple of nights ago. He's got everything, man. You name it, he has it. He can rush with power. He can rush with finesse. He's a really really good football player, and I don't want to say he's a victim of having Abdul Carter in the same draft class because Mike Green is not a he's not on the level of Abdul Carter or even on the level of the either of the Bosa brothers. He's not on that level, let alone the Chase Youngs and the Miles Garrett and all that. Will Anderson, that you get my point. But he's a good prospect. He's to me a typical top 10 to 12 prospect in a class. He should be a pretty high floor player, pretty high ceiling as well. And the Panthers need a lot of help on defense. That defense last year.
Yeah.
If you were not a Panthers fan, there were not a lot of players on that defense where I would challenge if anybody could name like 3 or 4 guys on that defense last year when healthy, because it was, they had Derek Brown go down early, which obviously didn't, that would have hurt anybody. But JC Horn, he was fine. He was good. He received a contract extension. I was glad for JC. But that defense was bad. So whether the defensive coordinator was whether it was Ejiro Evero or whoever, Vic Fangio, or the worst DC in the league, they were going to struggle. So biggest thing here, upgrade for the Panthers, and they're sitting pretty the rest of the night knowing they have a good edge rusher.
Yeah, I think they're going to be very happy with Mike Green at 8, and I think if he can mature, if those allegations are behind him, I think he'll be a really fine player for the Panthers at 8. And at 9, this could be interesting, but I have the Saints taking Shedeur Sanders out of Colorado. I think Sanders is going to land here at 9 to the Saints, and Kellen Moore is going to get his quarterback of the future. I think with Derek Carr on the way out, I think it's clear that Shedeur Sanders will be the pick here. There are possible picks for maybe the offensive line or maybe an edge rusher on defense. But I think with a prospect like Sanders, where he is accurate, okay, he takes one too many sacks, but he is a very accurate quarterback, in my opinion. I think he'd be a really good fit in that New Orleans system with Raheed Shaheed and Chris Olave on offense.
Yeah, the Saints are in they're just in a weird situation. They have a lot of needs, in my opinion. They're not really a good team, or they're not really great in any particular area. So you could go anywhere here. Kellen gets his guy. I think the Saints are. I personally think they'd go like BPA, regardless of position. To me, that would probably be. Well, maybe not regardless of position, because they just gave Juwan Johnson money. Otherwise, I would say Tyler Warren. I'd be surprised if they go Shedeur Sanders. But they're in a situation where if T-Mac would fall to him, that would be fine. If they wanted to go Will Campbell, I'd also be fine with that. And then if they wanted to take Shamar Stewart, I know it may be a little rich for him, but he's their type of guy. That would be a player that I could see them taking. But Shedeur is. That's again, it's a first where I've seen him go to New Orleans. I don't hate it, especially with the fact that I'm not a Derek Carr fan. I don't think he is a good quarterback. So hopefully that would work out. But the sooner they move on from Derek Carr, the better. And I know Saints fans agree with that.
Yeah. And at 10, I have the Bears going with Will Campbell out of LSU. I think they're going to continue to solidify that offensive line with Caleb Williams. And you pair him with Joe Thuney on the left side, I think that could be a very good pairing, regardless of arm length or arm size. And I do think Jonah Jackson last year was also a turnstile on that Rams offensive line. And that's why I have Will Campbell going to the Bears.
Yeah, anytime, this is the biggest thing, is anytime you can upgrade, especially with a prospect caliber of Will Campbell. I think he's another kind of victim of prospect fatigue. I'd be a little surprised if they go Will Campbell, simply because, not because he's a good player, just because of how many assets they poured into the offensive line this year. But he's a good player, and he's going to be an upgrade, especially he'll be a long-term player. So if he were to play left tackle, and you would have a tackle duo of Will Campbell and Darnell Wright, and then, of course, Caleb Williams, you're sitting really good on offense, especially having those guys on rookie contracts, which are, again, effectively a discounts. And then we mentioned the quarterback and tackle duo, and you might as well throw in Rome Odunze on a discount as well with his abilities at the receiver position.
I agree with you 100%, and I do think it would solidify the blind side. And I think the mentorship from Joe Thuney as well, who has been I believe, a 5-time Super Bowl winning guard with the Patriots and the Chiefs. I just think that would be a really good left side. And then you do have Drew Dalman in the center as
Right.
well. So I feel like Caleb Williams will be well protected on the offensive line this season. And at 11 with the 49ers, I have them going with Michael Williams out of Georgia for the 49ers. I think his partnership with Nick Bosa on the defensive line, I think it would generate pressure on quarterbacks easily. And that is key come playoff season. And I do believe the 49ers will pay Brock Purdy nearly a max contract. So I think they are going to want to get good young players on the team.
Yeah, I mean, I like Michael Williams. To be honest, I'm used to pairing Michael Williams with like the Falcons at 15. That's a team that I love to pair Michael Williams with is the Falcons at 15, even the Bengals at 17. So I like him a lot as a prospect for what he is. I think obviously he is built in a lab physically. I mean, he is length, he
Yeah,
is
it's the
strength.
raw talent is
Yeah.
unbelievable.
And hopefully you would hope that Nick Bosa could, I mean, not Nick Bosa specifically himself, but you would hope that he'd be able to get coached, and you'd be able to hope that he can pick up on the techniques of the pass rush position and tune it up, if you will. Not to say that that's a guarantee just because he's in the same facility as Nick Bosa. But
Yeah,
Michael Williams at pick 11 is an interesting one. I would not also be opposed to Will Johnson, the corner. They lost Travarius Ward this offseason. He signed with the Colts. But I like the 49ers addressing the edge position. And this doesn't apply to just the AFC. You can never have too many pass rushers, regardless of division,
yeah.
conference. You can never have too many pass rushers.
Yep, I 100% agree, especially in playoff season when generating pressure in the run game and defending the run is key come January, February playoff football. And at pick 12, staying in state with the Cowboys, I have Shamar Stewart going to the Cowboys at 12. I think Jerry Jones is going to want to continue to defend the run and the pass, and I think his pairing with Micah Parsons on the defensive line with an edge rushing trio would just be ridiculous for quarterbacks to face.
Yeah, I mean, look, like I said, you're not going to get a complaint out of me for getting a good pass rusher. The only thing I would say is I'm a big Luther Burden fan, so I do want the Cowboys to take Luther Burden, just for Dak and CD and Luther, and with the prospect fatigue, maybe Tedero McMillan falls. We'll see. But if you can have Micah, Shamar Stewart, Marshawn Nealon, you have a lot of options and a lot of ways for guys to win to get after the quarterback. So I also don't worry about the 1.5 sacks. I don't worry about that with the traits that he has and with what he's showed on tape. So I don't worry about that.
Yeah. And I think he's going to learn a lot from Micah Parsons as well over the next couple of years. And I think that'll be a dangerous duo for any offensive line to face in the upcoming seasons. And at 13, I do have the Dolphins going Will Johnson out of Michigan, because outside of Jalen Ramsey, that cornerback room is very thin. And I think with the receivers in the AFC East, like Garrett Wilson and Stephon Diggs, and then you do have Keon Coleman and Khalil Shakir that are upcoming, I think defending the pass in the secondary will be key for the Dolphins if they do want to try and make a push for the AFC East this year.
For sure. I love Will Johnson. I mean, look, I'm not going to push back on him because he, to me, is, when healthy, a top 6 or 7 player in this class. He's a really, really good corner prospect. I will say there will be Dolphins fans that will talk about addressing the offensive or defensive line. They desperately want an upgrade, and they want to be beefier. They want to be stronger. There's a point in being a finesse team, and then there's a point in being to the point where you can't stop anybody or you can't generate push yourself like the Dolphins. So I do think Dolphins fans will push back on the trenches part, but I mean, you're getting a really, really, really good corner. So we'll see,
exactly.
We'll see.
And at 14, I've seen yourself and many other people mock this, but I do have Tyler Warren going to the Colts at 14. I think he is an elite tight end prospect. I think his catch radius, I think his hands are very well polished. I think he will thrive in that Shane Steichen system.
Yeah, there's not a lot to say. Tyler Warren is a complete player. He can throw the ball, he can run the ball, he can block, he can catch. he had a year in 2024. So
Yeah.
the reality is you're in a do or die now or never year with Anthony Richardson. So you might as well get a target that is equivalent to the size of a bed mattress and basically say, AR, we know you've had accuracy issues. If you cannot hit a mattress from 20 yards away, we got bigger problems on our hands. So I like Tyler Warren a lot. Everybody likes this landing spot for a reason. To me, Tyler Warren he's a prototypical tight end. He could, I mean, name a weakness with him other than what he's 23 going on 24. So what? You're getting a player that could very easily be a top 7 or 8 tight end as a rookie if the opportunity is given to him. So I'm a big Tyler Warren fan, and good landing spot. Good landing spot for both him and for Anthony Richardson if it plays out like this.
Yep. And I have the Falcons going with the other Georgia linebacker / edge rusher, Jalen Walker. And Raheem Morris is going to get his guy and try finally generate some pressure on the quarterback this year. I think his raw athleticism is ridiculous, but I do think he needs to build a pass rush skill set. However, I do think that can be done under the leadership of Raheem Morris.
I hope you're right. I've said before that, I don't like the problem is I don't like going out here and saying, hey, this guy stinks. He's not going to make it. And I haven't said that about Jalen Walker because I like Jalen Walker a lot as a linebacker. I'm not, admittedly, I'm not a big fan of him as an edge rushing prospect. I hope to be proved wrong. But for the Falcons, I would love a true edge here rather than bank on the upside of Jalen Walker. And I would love if you're going to go linebacker, I would like Jahad Campbell. But the thing is the thing for me personally, whether I'm talking to you, whether I'm talking to the Falcons GM, whether I'm talking to Mel Kiper, whoever, it's just I'm out on Jalen Walker as an edge rusher as a rookie. I know he's 21, he can certainly develop, but I have a lot of questions about him at edge. So like I said, I hope I'm proved wrong. But I'm not a big Jalen Walker guy. I think he's a better off-ball linebacker than I do edge rusher, and that's for me what it boils down to.
I agree, but I have seen him mocked as high as 5 with the Jaguars, which I do think is a little bit crazy because I don't think he's that caliber player.
Right. Well, I know Daniel Jeremiah posted his top 50 a couple of days ago, and he had him at I'm going to say 5, and that's really rich. That's really rich for me personally. So, like I said, DJ obviously, I mean, he writes the scouting, he writes the top 50 with his eyes, he does the mock with his ears, but I don't think Jalen Walker's a top 5 player in this class. But it's that's the guy for me. To me, one of the most controversial players in this class.
I agree with you 100%. And at 16, I have the Cardinals going with Kelvin Banks. And I think his movement skills and athleticism would pair amazingly in that Drew Petzing system, along with Kyler Murray's scrambling and running ability. And I think it would be a really good scheme fit at 16.
Yeah, for as much as I just talked about Jalen Walker, I'm the opposite with Kelvin Banks. I am a huge Kelvin Banks fan. And then if you could have a tackle duo of Paris Johnson and Kelvin Banks, that's incredible. That would be one of my. I mean, that would probably. I liked Paris as a prospect, so that would be one of my favorite. That'd probably be aside from Christian Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill, because I am a Vikings fan and I also like both players a lot, obviously. But aside from those two, it'd probably be my favorite tackle duo in the league. Maybe Jordan Mailata and Lane because of how dominant they are, especially Lane at this stage in his career. But I mean, Kelvin Banks to me, plug and play, don't overthink it, great player. And you name anywhere that needs an offensive lineman, I like the landing spot. I'll just leave it at that.
I agree with you 100%. And at 17, with the Bengals paying both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, very high money contracts, I have the Bengals going defense with James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee. I think his immediate explosiveness and pressure will work in Al Golden's scheme and will generate some pressure towards the quarterback as they struggled mightily last year on that defense in those trenches.
Yeah, look, James Pierce Jr., whether it's him, whether it's as a Raku, whoever, Nick Scorton, although it's probably a little rich for Scorton at this point. The reality is they also have contractual problems right now with Trey Hendrickson. So even if Trey Hendrickson comes back, I mean, he is 30, or he's getting up there. He's been in the league since 2017. So you have to think that, I mean, he's had back-to-back 17.5 sack seasons. You're going to have to naturally start coming down the mountain. So I like this pick a lot for the Bengals. I like this pick a lot, and I think it's a good pick. And they had to go
I
defense,
agree with
especially
you.
after last year. They had to go defense.
Yeah,
So I like the pick.
I agree 100%. And at 18, I had the Seahawks going with Great Zabel to protect their new franchise quarterback, Sam Darnold. I think he is a really strong anchor, and he's a very mature and knowledgeable player at that position. And I do think he has any position flexibility on that offensive line, whether it's center, guard, or tackle.
I'm right there with you. I did a video that was released today on the Texans who are coming up at pick 25, and I had the idea of them taking Gray Zabel at pick 25, and I think Zabel has a really high floor. Anywhere from really pick 15, 16 on, because of how high of a floor he has, and given that he will almost be an upgrade for any offensive line in the NFL, somewhere along the offensive line, I like the selection, and especially for Seattle, who desperately needs help along the offensive
Yeah,
line.
they significantly struggled in that interior of the offensive line last year. So I think it'd be a massive improvement for Sam Darnold, who also struggled under pressure in those final couple of games last year because of the interior offensive line play.
100%.
And at 19, I have the Bucks going with Jahade Barron out of Texas. I have seen Jahad Campbell frequently mocked here, but I have Jahade Barron going to the Bucks. I think they're going to look to improve their secondary with Jamal Dean and Anton Winfield and really form a no-fly zone for any passing quarterback in the league, especially in the NFC South in division.
Yeah, when you started, I heard you pronounce the J. I was like, oh, he's going Jahad Campbell, and then you surprised me with Jahdae Barron. I like both players here. Both players fill a need. Both players are great football players. I'm high on both guys. You're not going to hear me say anything about either player. You know what? Good football player. Check the box. Move on to the second round for Tampa Bay. Good first night of the 2025 draft. So I like the pick for him.
Agreed. And I have seen Jahid Barron go as high as 8 to the Panthers, so I do think it'd be a good value pick for the Bucks as well at 19. But with the Broncos at 20, I have them going with Matthew Golden out of Texas. Bo Nix is a new weapon to throw to and to grow with also alongside him over the next couple of seasons. And Sean Payton also has a really fun player to work with as well.
Golden's a good route runner. Now I know you're in the 4.2940. I am a little lower on Golden than consensus. I don't think he's a bad player. I'm just a little lower. But he's the biggest thing is he's an upgrade. You pair Matthew Golden or Emeka Ibuka in that offense next to Cortland Sutton. You have your build. If you build a receiver room, you have your big body in Sutton. You have your smaller Z receiver in either Golden or Ibuka. I'm good with either player. Like I said, Golden ran a 4.29 at the combine on track. I don't think that translates to how he plays in game. That doesn't mean he's a bad player. I just don't think he's a 4.29 guy in game. But the biggest thing, you upgrade and you put up 7 points in the playoffs. It was obviously a phenomenal season for the Broncos to even get to the playoffs, but you need more firepower. So like the pick,
Yeah,
and
agreed.
you have a good quarterback receiving duo.
Yep. So at 21, so I originally made these notes on Monday, and this was before the Aaron Rodgers throwing session with DK Metcalf. So my original pick was Jackson Dart. However, I am going to swerve away from that a little bit. And I have the Steelers going with Derek Harmon out of Oregon to build up their defensive trenches and really pair him with an aging Cam Hayward, who is still a really fine player, but he is aging and he is getting older. And I think he'd be the perfect replacement at that position.
For sure. And I still wouldn't be opposed. For what it's worth, I wouldn't be opposed to Jackson Dart as a developmental pick here at 21. I really wouldn't. But with Derek Harmon, like you hit the head on the nail. Cam Hayward is 35, and that's ancient, especially. I mean, that's not just ancient for the quarterback position. That's really ancient for a guy that's played, over
Yeah.
170 games in the trenches. I mean, look, I know quarterbacks get hit, and I'm not questioning their toughness, but think about Cam Hayward getting hit every play by Tyler Linderbaum of the Ravens, or think about him getting hit by Wyatt Teller of the Browns, or Joel Bitonio. They've those especially Joel and Cam Hayward have doled it out probably 20 plus times over the past decade. I mean, and Cam Hayward he's getting hit every single play. So I'm not going to push back on that. And then you also get to pair Harmon with a player that I like quite a bit in Keanu Benton. So I like it. I like
Yeah.
it.
I think it's a really nice fit there at 21. And at 22, I have Jim Harbaugh getting his guy in Colston Loveland and giving Justin Herbert another weapon. I think his fluid movement is just ridiculous, and I think he would provide an easy open target for Herbert in very clutch situations. And he has performed in very high pressure situations as well. So I do think he'd be a good fit for the Chargers at 22.
Love it. I actually tweeted last either June or July, started the preliminary dive into the tape of the 25 class and just watched Colston Loveland and just couldn't believe how effortless he looked during the 2023
Yeah.
season in which they won the national championship. But 2024 was a down year because the quarterback play was terrible. I mean, he was getting open, and there's one play that I go back to against Illinois where he's open. There's nobody within 5 yards of him. All the quarterback has to do is just drop it right to him, even if it's a couple feet off. Look, Colston's right there. He overthrows it. Colston dives. He dives, and it's nowhere close. And Justin Herbert's not going to
So frustrating to watch.
Right, Justin Herbert's
Yeah.
not going to miss him that much. The biggest thing for the Chargers is they upgraded what was one of the worst tight end rooms in all of football last year. So, and it's also a Michigan guy. Bonus. So you give him Colston,
exactly.
give him Colston Loveland, Luther Burden. Just move on. I love the Chargers. I love the idea of the Chargers drafting one of those two players.
I agree with you 100%. And at 23, I do have the Packers going with Jahad Campbell out of Alabama. I think he's going to be a beast in that Jeff Hafley defense. He's a hard-hitting player, and he's an intimidating player as well. And I just think he would provide a lot of power and immediate impact in that defensive scheme.
Agree. I never know where to go with the Packers in really any point in the draft. They'll surprise you. Last year, I thought it was clear. I thought it was clear Graham Barton was a better prospect than Jordan Morgan. I think Jordan Morgan was bad. I just thought Graham Barton was a lot better. But you could tell me right now, hey, the Packers are going to take pretty much any play. I mean, there's a couple positions you can cross off, like quarterback, obviously, but even tight end for that matter. But you give me 6 or 7 positions, nothing would surprise me with them. And look, they have the results to back it up. They're a consistent double-digit win team. I know they got bounced in the wild card round this past year, but they're one of the better teams. I mean, they're one of the most well-run franchises in the sport. But you never know what they're going to do on draft night. You never know what they're going to do on draft night.
Yeah. And at 24, I think the Vikings are going to be very happy taking Malachi Starks out of Georgia. And despite maybe a bit of doubt because of the Lewisine pick a couple of years ago, I think Starks is a lot cleaner of a prospect. His speed and high football intelligence, I really do think he would flourish in that Brian Flores defensive system.
Agree, 100%. And especially with Cam Bynum leaving in free agency, Harrison Smith.
Yeah.
Harry's 36 years old now, year 14. So, yeah, I mean, there's not a lot to say. It upgrades a position, good football player. And the Vikings, I think a lot of people would agree that Malachi Starks is better than the 24th player in the class. So they get plus value on the big board as well.
Yeah, I do think it's just because he's a safety. I think his stock will fall a little bit, but I think him going to the Vikings would be a really good fit at 24. And at 25, I do have the Texans taking Josh Simmons out of Ohio State. Especially after the shock trade of Laramie Tunsil going to the Commanders, I think they're going to really have to protect CJ Stroud and really protect his blind side. And I do think Josh Simmons will do that. And despite doubts with that knee injury, I do think he'll bounce back because he was viewed, like as in before his knee injury, as a really high caliber prospect. And I do think he will flourish in that Texans offense.
I'm right there with you. Josh Simmons, to me, when healthy, best tackle in the class. And I just talked about a couple minutes ago how big of a Kelvin Banks fan I am. Josh Simmons is, healthy. He's a monster. I didn't think his pass protection was all that far away from looking at like a young Trent Williams. The run game not as dominant as Trent because Trent's kind of one of one in that area. But yeah. Josh Simmons has the anchor. He has the mirroring ability. He's a beast, man. He's a flat out dang good football player, and it'd be good. I mean, it'd be a good pickup for anybody.
I agree with you. And with the Rams at 26, I have them taking Nick Scorton out of Texas A&M on a defensive line full of young talent like Braden Fisk. You have Byron Young, you have Jared Verse. I think adding Nick Scorton, he'd be a perfect fit in that Chris Shula defense. And I think generating pressure to the quarterback is key in big playoff moments, and I think he would flourish alongside those other players. And I don't think you would have to worry about double teams either. So
That one surprises me in a good way. In a good way. I just have never seen Nick Scorton to the Rams. I mean, like I said, I'm a big Scorton fan. I am a little higher on him than where the media is. I think that with his his down year from Purdue to A&M, the transfer was kind of
yeah,
soured some people, but I still think he's a good player. And the Rams have done a tremendous job of building their team over the past couple of drafts. I mean, in the past two drafts, they've gotten guys like Puka and Byron Young, and of course Jared Verse and Braden Fisk last year, and even back to 23, they drafted Steve Avila, and they're a really good team, and they know especially that championships are built in the trenches. So, Dick Scorton, great football player.
I mean, this could potentially be maybe a Tyler Booker team, but I personally don't think he would be a good scheme fit just because I think Tyler Booker is much more of a straight line player, and you get him outside of his little box, I don't
Right.
think he'll play well at all. But at 27, I have the Ravens going with Donovan Ezeraku out of Boston College. I think with a clear pass rush skill set, I think he would flourish in that defensive system. And I think even more pressure on big players like Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes in the AFC Championship or the wild card would be massive. And I think he'd be a really good fit in that Ravens defense.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I'm again, I know I said this about several guys, but I really am a big Ezra fan. The production at Boston College in his final year was phenomenal. He would be one of the bigger steals from the first round if this were the landing spot. You get him in the final year with Odafe Owe, who's I don't know if they're going to pay him or not, but Odafe is he's a good player, but again, I don't know if the Ravens are going to pay him, but you could have him and David Ojabo and Kyle Van Noy and Donovan Ezeraku, and you have options to get after the quarterback. And
Yeah.
Ezeraku
And
is a really, really good player.
yeah, and I think especially with those David Ojabo injury concerns, I think he would slot right into this defense really nicely. And at 28, I do have the Lions going with Kenny Grant out of Michigan, building those defensive trenches after an injury-riddled season last year, struggling to generate any pressure in the second half of the year because of the lack of high-quality talent on that defensive line. And I think Kenny Grant would provide immediate impact.
Yeah, it'd be interesting with the pairing of or the trio of Aiden Hutchinson, Ali McNeil, and then Kenneth Grant. They of course paid Ali McNeil last year, and it'd be about 680 pounds of beef right in the middle of the defense. So
Yeah,
for a defense that was already good at stopping the run, I mean you might as well just drop back and pass because that would be even more difficult to try and run on this, or yeah, to even try and run on this defense. So plus you stay in Michigan again, an interesting pick. I've never seen Kenneth Grant to the Lions, but it's an interesting selection, and I like Kenneth Grant as a prospect, and I think Buffalo would be pretty upset by this pick if he went to Detroit.
I agree 100%. I think they would be really frustrated knowing a really fine defensive talent got away at 28. But at 29, the Commanders will be delighted because I have a Marion Hampton to the Commanders, adding explosive speed and firepower to an offense already with a scrambling quarterback like Jaden Daniels and a really fine receiver, Terry McLaurin. I think Cliff Kingsbury would have loads of fun implementing O'Marion Hampton into that offense.
Yeah, good luck stopping it. I mean, Omarion Hampton is a bulldozer. Good luck, man. Jaden, Omarion, Terry McLaurin. Debo's not the player he was 4 years ago, but he's still has to be accounted for, and they would not be a fun offense to play, especially when you have a guy that does not take any plays off at quarterback that can run from one side of the field to the other on any play, tire your defense out, and then the next play, guess what? We're going to give a 220-pound back the football. He's going to run straight at you, run through someone's face, and say, "Stop me." So. That's one of
Yeah,
my favorite pairings in the draft is Omarion Hampton to the Washington Commanders.
and I think that'll be massive in January and February as well when running the
100%.
ball really becomes a critical factor in winning those playoff games. But at 30, I do have the Bills going with Walter Nolan because I think, okay, you have Ed Oliver and Joey Bosa, but there's too much injury concerns. And I really do think if the Bills want to generate pressure on that defensive line, I do think Walter Nolan would be a perfect fit in Sean McDermott's defense.
Yeah, Walter is he's a really good prospect. He It's a really good pass rushing defensive tackle prospect. He reminds me of kind of a more athletic Ed Oliver, ironically enough, with him going to Buffalo. I like Walter Nolan a lot, and the worst thing that a quarterback can face is a consistent interior pass rush. So you get Walter Nolan, you definitely have a surplus of that, and hopefully Joey Bosa stays healthy. And I would imagine they play him in kind of in a pass rushing specific only package this year, where they're not really worrying on the first and second down, but when it's 3rd and 7, hey, we need him on the field to get after the quarterback. But Walter Nolan, good football player, definitely better than the 30th player in this draft class.
Exactly, I agree with you. And with the Chiefs at 31, so I have 2 players to go with here. Could either go with Donovan Jackson out of Ohio State or Tyler Booker out of Alabama, because it is really tough to decide here. I think Tyler Booker is a really fine pass blocker, but the minute you take him out of the pass blocking stance, he's really going to struggle in the league. And I think Donovan Jackson is a really fine prospect, but I just think who would work better in that scheme. However, I am going to go with Tyler Booker because I think him protecting Patrick Mahomes would allow for the Mahomes Xavier Worthy connection to just excel, especially with the loss of Joe Tooney at guard. I think him, Creed Humphrey, and Trey Smith would provide a fine interior line for Patrick Mahomes.
Okay, I'm not sold on the left tackle situation personally. They brought in the tackle from the 49ers over in free agency. I'm a big
Jalen
Josh.
Moore.
Yes, yes. I'm a big Josh Connerly guy. I think Josh Connerly is a better player than Jalen Moore. But I like the way you broke it down with Tyler Booker. I mean, they need help along the offensive line. The Super Bowl was evident of that. And
yeah,
I know Joe Tooney was out of position, obviously, but he's playing left tackle, and they were not in a good position to match the Eagles. But you need offensive line help no matter how you slice it. So Tyler Booker, solid prospect, and you have him, Creed, and Trey Smith. That again, that's a lot of beef along the interior offensive line.
Yep, I 100% agree with you. At 32, the Eagles will be swooping in, taking Nick Emenwari out of South Carolina. I think that would be an unreal fit in their secondary, especially with the loss of CJ Gardner-Johnson. I think Emenwari would fit right in with Quinion Mitchell and DeJean and really beef up that secondary.
Yeah, Emenwari is. Like I said, I like him a lot as a prospect as well. PFF has him around like the 46th prospect in the class. I think he's better than that personally. But Vic Fangio would definitely not have a problem figuring out a way to use Nick Emenwari. And they also traded CJ Gardner-Johnson, like you said, to the Texans. So you get a good player, and you also fill a need that was created by a trade this offseason.
Yeah. But however, that is the end of our 32-round mock draft. I would like to thank you, Garrett, for coming on from Football Analysis. Please give him a subscribe. Please give him a subscribe because his content is just unreal. And I've been watching it and listening to it for up to 3 years now. And I just think he's a class YouTuber. No, it's all good, man. Don't worry. But anyway, that is the end of the live stream. Thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, man. Thank you.